This is a conversation with Joe Henderson, the founder and CEO of Sierra Health and Wellness. Joe's story is absolutely wild. He started Sierra on credit cards after leaving a stable job and moving his young family in with his parents. Just 7 years later, Sierra today is approaching $250 million in revenue with 650 employees across 3 states and top-ranked clinical outcomes nationally. All this completely self-funded with no outside capital. This is one of the most interesting stories in behavioral health today. In this episode, we get into how Joe built Sierra, his acquisition playbook, and what it really takes to scale in behavioral health without cutting corners. I hope you enjoy it.
One of the biggest rules of thumb here is we sacrificed greatly, right? And you continue to sacrifice until the goal is met. Once you have your first acquisition, then you need to expand the ecosystem of services in that market based off of the demand. If they don't need to be in a general hospital admitted, we can take them. And that does mean we have to pay for a lot more providers. That does mean we need a lot more nurses. That does mean we need a lot more psychiatrists or psych nurse practitioners or whatever, right? So it does mean that we have larger infrastructure, but it pays for itself.
Tell me a bit about what you were thinking what your vision was when you got started with Sierra, because by now you've been running Elijah for about 4 or 5 years. So you're quite experienced in this industry. You've seen success, you've seen what good looks like. And then you're kind of venturing into the for-profit setup.
Yeah.
What were you thinking at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I was primarily focused on really independence. Working with the state does not feel independent, and so I wanted to expand and I wanted to grow and I wanted to expand our services, and that just wasn't happening in the confines of state granted dollars. And to your point, Elijah House, though it was a nonprofit, it was a fee-for-service company. So, we have had grants before, but they were specialized grants. So like, run this homeless shelter or do this. The organization was never reliant on that grant. And so when we opened, it was really about how do we take, the incredible services that we're providing at a smaller scale, and how do we expand those into the greater California area. And that was really done through the infrastructure of Elijah House. And so we were able to come in at a really good time with our Concord facility and negotiate a deal with them as they were basically closing up shop, essentially.
This was your first acquisition?
Yeah.
And this was in 2019?
This was in 2019.
Just as you had gotten started with Sierra?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And so it was how Sierra started. And so we took one of Elijah House's treatment facility, one of 2 of inpatient, and then we did the acquisition through RMS. And how we did that was through a transition period with their organization. RMS was a nonprofit themselves. So how do you buy a nonprofit? You really can't. And so we negotiated effectively severance agreements to the founders. The program itself was doing poor because the husband had passed, and he was really the founder, the one who ran the program. And as the family tried and attempted to run the program, being in the addiction medicine space specifically is highly competitive, and it's not for the faint of heart. And most people don't think at 6th grade that I'm gonna run a detox residential facility or what have you. And so you seemingly find yourself into that. So we worked out severance packages, which was the buyout essentially for them, and it was paid through the revenue of the facility, not up front and not out of anyone's expenses. And that's really how Sierra has grown. It's always been, how do we pay for the acquisition from the acquisition itself, right? Instead of here's a check with X amount of dollars, let's maybe pay a little bit more for it, but using the revenue, the success of the program itself to pay for the program. And so there was metrics that were designed to pay out certain amount of dollars. Very conservative, really, not a lot, but it was based off of the success of the program. So we essentially came in. They voted us on their board. We voted them off. Negotiated the contracts. We took over operation. So we managed the program. We really cleaned it up, renovated it, made it successful. And then through that revenue, which didn't exist before, right? Through that revenue, we were able to pay those severances off and then continue to expand from that. That was the business. The real estate, we were able to negotiate, I think it was a 3-year lease option. So again, the same concept. We'll pay you later, basically, right? And we'll pay you through the revenue that the business itself generates. And so we negotiated 3-year lease option. We locked in the price. So important on a lease option because you will the price will raise over time, right? And so we bought that program for, I think it was $2.5 million. It was, I mean, for
this was $2.5 million as the payout for the founders.
For the real estate.
Oh, for the real estate.
For the building, yeah.
Yeah.
The payout for the founders was substantially less.
Okay.
But thinking about it, this is 3 buildings, basically a city block in East Bay for $2.5 million. When we bought it, because it was locked in, when we bought it, it was appraised for $8 million. So again, key of don't rent a property, renovate it, seemingly increasing the value of the landlord's business, which is real estate. And then pay for the renovations, and pay for that in value when you buy it. So lock in your price. You have the ability to pay off that amount over the course of time. However you want to do the deal.
You came in a lease with an option to buy in X years, and then you renovated the building. And the value of the property also went up because you renovated it.
Correct.
Okay, and then you were able to use the cash flow from the business to actually eventually buy out the property at a much lower price because you had locked it in.
Yeah, and because the property increased in valuation so much, there was really we used the asset of the property to buy the lease out. So it really didn't come out of our pocket at all. In fact, we made money on the deal, right?
And the key here, Joe, is actually finding a program where the founders are looking to leave and they're really looking to not continue in this business anymore. And so I think that was, and then you bring in your operating muscle and expertise and say, hey, I can run this better. And then you take your time and then turn it around. And then that way you have a very asset-light way of getting into the business and acquiring the business. Very interesting,
Yeah, and as we get larger, which we are substantially larger today, you are able to really use your economies of scale and monetize that, right?
Yeah.
And so when you say we're able to bring in the muscle, as you get bigger, that becomes more and more real. That becomes more and more valuable.
Yeah, walk through that, what those are.
Yeah. So in that particular case, right, we were still a smaller organization, but we had the team that was, the expenses were already hitting the book. So realistically, it wasn't this major increase of cost to operate. But in the larger scale, I'll give you the most recent one where you have a beautiful program, beautiful name, beautiful reputation. But as a mom and pop organization, those beds only pay for so much. And as a mom and pop, you really don't have the infrastructure to have the reputation, to have the ability to come in and expand in a way. And I'll give you an example. So when we acquire in Houston, we don't need to increase admissions because we already have them. We don't need to increase providers because we already have them. This cost doesn't hit our books because we're able to monetize the economies of scale. Now, as the census increases for a facility, say, you have to add at that point. But again, it's the same concept. The revenue from the location is paying for that increase, right? But the key is the startup cost. That is where people need capital investment, and that's where they need very expensive investors or very expensive loans to come in. And if you're able to use the business itself to basically self-finance the startup, then
walk me through this a bit, Joe. So, for example, if there is a profit-generating business today, the owners of the business would want to sell it at a multiple of that profit normally, right? And so that does end up being, let's say, 4x or 5x or whatever their profit is, which is generated over 5 years,
right,
which is typically what the business is bought for, depending on the business right up front, which allows the founders to then exit that business. Now, you could negotiate like a more delayed payout, but I'd be interested in understanding, because you're saying the business pays for itself. How do you structure it such that
that particular example would only work if for some reason you as the organization buying it have the ability to either shave off substantial costs and effectively increase the margin, or the opposite, right? You're able to come in and somehow increase revenue. So one of the examples that we're moving forward on is a deal in the Arizona area, and I'll just stay with that specific. And it's a very profitable, profitable for what it is, profitable business, very established, good reputation. And the individual running it is a licensed social worker, I think she is, and she has 7 outpatient clinics throughout the Arizona area. And how do you buy that? Well, we can buy it via a multiplier, right? Or if we want to, and we could do that now, we could do, here's a check. We couldn't do that before, but we could do that. Or if we want to allow the organization to pay for itself, again, we have to either be able to lower costs, increase revenue, or both. And in this particular case, we're able to say, hey, here's your 4x figure. We'll pay you 4.5 or 5x figure in 2 years, not now, but in 2 years or 3 years, right? And it will be based off of increased revenue. And so for us, we're coming in. As a therapist, she's doing quite a good job at operating the business from individual therapy. But for us, we look at that and we go, what a lost opportunity. We could do PHP level of care. We could do IOP level of care. We could do primary care if we wanted to. We could do, all of the things that we are building out in our ecosystem, like pharmacy, those various things. And so we're able to quite easily, with the same population, significantly increase the revenue. And so in that particular case, it really just depends. But I will say mostly where it's beneficial is for lower performing opportunities.
Got it.
And so these are opportunities where the facility is either outright failing, meaning bankruptcy, et cetera, which we've done 2 of those, or it's very low performing. And those are just the deals. If you want to grow from a grassroots, no investment opportunity, those are the deals that you focus on. You don't necessarily want to buy a highly profitable business that's prime time rates, because you're going to be paying those people. You said 4 or 5. Really, it's going to be, 8 or 9, depending on the area and the business or what have you. That's a lot of profits. And if you don't have really any ability to increase revenue or any ability to really decrease cost, that's a poor investment.
That makes sense. And so then, if you look at any sort of poorly performing facility, right? What are you thinking of? The facility could be not performing because either there's not that much demand in that locality, or it could be they're not managing the costs efficiently, right? Demand is not something you can really solve for actively, but you could, of course, add IOP, PHP, and some of the other programming and increase demand. How do you think through of all the assets that might be not performing so well in mental health, Joe, the thesis in terms of what is my sweet spot in terms of these are the kind of companies you want to go after?
Yeah. So really, mostly, it's going to be operationally inefficient
Okay,
performance.
got it.
So you don't want to go into an area that doesn't have high demand. If it's failing because there's lack of demand,
Yeah.
that's not a good opportunity. You really want to look for an entity that has the demand there, whether it's a competitive market or not. That's dependent on your confidence level. But realistically, if the demand is there and the organization is failing, what is it failing for? The demand's there. So it's either the owner, operator is managing it poorly, maybe high expenses, maybe they're not successfully marketing the business. Um, but your due diligence is to find out if you can do it better. And as you grow and as that compounds, your confidence in doing it better increases,
Yeah.
right? And so those are the really big things. Buying at a multiplier is really only for private equity. And the reason it's only for private equity is because they buy it and they sell it in 3 to 5 years. So they buy it. Who cares if they pay a 7, 8 multiplier? Because they're going to build the EBITDA. They're going to increase it by 50% or sometimes 100%, depending on the opportunity. And then they're going to sell it for 8 multiplier in 5 years. So they're going to make their money plus 50%, 100% in that 3 to 5 year period. They don't care about anything else. So the price point of buying it doesn't really matter. It's all about the EBITDA.
And what this means is that you need to have a repeatable playbook that you can take and then apply in facility after facility. And then just to tie the thread, so Sierra has primarily grown through an acquisitive model, correct? So over the last 7 years, you've kind of started from in 2019 and now just maybe walk through quickly
Yeah.
where you're at in terms of scale.
Yeah. So the big key is, not to give out too much information, but the big thing is when you make your first acquisition via low performing, or the other way is in a market you're familiar with, and maybe that starts with an acquisition. So once you have your first acquisition, then you need to expand the ecosystem of services in that market based off of the demand. So that's where you're going to really maximize your business. It's not just the acquisition here or the acquisition there. So if I buy a low performing opportunity in Concord, California, which I did, then I'm going to be able to say, okay, what other demand exists in the East Bay, right? And so we then open up the various modalities, right? That makes sense. And not all of them make sense, right? You really have to understand what the demand is. But once you enter the market and you get the pulse of what's needed and what's not needed, you could have high competition in SUD, maybe adolescent services are needed, or maybe there's a lot of inpatient and you can do outpatient services, vice versa, everything in between. Whatever that is, you come in and then you maximize that opportunity, because those opportunities where you're growing in the market that you already exist is always going to be the cheapest way, as opposed to even a low-performing acquisition. A low-performing acquisition is just when you get into a new market, right? And so then you expand. Boom, 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 boom.
And also, new services are fairly complex to execute well. So
Yeah.
the other side of this argument could be, hey, stick to what you know really well. Don't expand too many services, because there's like a fair bit of complexity and overheads, especially in a market like this. And so I wonder how you think about, okay, what would I add on? What would I refrain from? And what mental models you have there.
Yeah. I might be a little different than most. I really don't consider anything too hard or too complex. It's either needed or it's not. My job is to figure it out, right? And maybe that's unique to me, but I would say the biggest thing is my confidence in my team. I myself am not a physician, and I need to make sure I have good physicians working for me, right? We have an incredible team that's very experienced. And so it's all about that stepping stone, and it's that balancing act. And when I say do that low performing acquisition and then grow based off of the demand, of course, you have to be able to do a really good job of that demand, right? And that is the precursor to that. And that might be as simple as recruiting, a team member or two in order to get it started. But you do that after the acquisition is then successful. So you open the low performing acquisition, you do it well, and maybe that takes a year or 2 years. And then you figure out what the temperature is and grow from there. Right.
Interesting. So walk me through this, because I know this acquiring a low performing asset and turning it around is not as easy as it might come across in our conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people try this and it's not easy. It's really hard because there's a brand for that facility. They're not getting demand for a reason.
Right.
And it takes time for the local community as well to become aware of what's changing. It takes time. Someone needs to go in, ways of working. So much needs to change. Maybe just walk me through acquisitions which haven't played out so well for you, Joe. Mistakes, and then the successful cases, and then maybe we can compare and see what went well, because this is fundamentally not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. I would say, especially on the inpatient world, what a lot of people make mistakes on is they think because they can open and operate that they will be successful. And if there's no heads in beds, there's no revenue, right? And so getting patients is always, and it would really be surprising to most folks, but it's the hardest part, right? Especially in the competitive world, it's the hardest part. So overspend on marketing, and I don't mean digitally.
Okay.
Most people spend almost all their money on digitally.
Say more. Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, whatever they call them, effectively it's sales, but some entities call them clinical outreach, business development. It is a form of business development for sure. We call it partnerships, very similar to some other programs like Discovery and other individuals. And we call it it's really the Department of Strategic Partnerships. And, for us, it's all about serving the local healthcare systems. And so it's not about developing business, it's about developing strategic partners. And so you have to be, we're kind of on the low-hanging totem pole in the healthcare field, being in behavioral health. And so we have to serve the others, right? Whether it's say it's an emergency department. Emergency department, they got a much bigger fish to fry than a detoxing patient, right? And so for us, how do we do their job for them so that when they think about us, they are going to refer to us and not the other guy? So what can we do differently in order to get that patient out much quicker than our competitors?
How do you do that?
Everywhere.
What makes them think of you first?
Well, I won't get into a bunch of details because that's our makeup and part of our why we're successful. But the principle is really what are our competitors not doing, right? And that's a big list, unfortunately. Well, fortunately for us. And so we will spend money on certain things, which human capital, where a lot of players would think it is a waste of money. And for us, it is securing the heads and beds, right? It's securing the fact that we get the patient and our competitors don't. And so that's part of it. That's part of the kind of the partnership world in healthcare. The biggest thing, and I know this is going to be like, yeah, okay. The biggest thing is you have to be good. You have to be clinically good, and you have to be successful in your outcomes. And, for Sierra, and I don't say this in a bragging sense, but we dump money in our clinical professionals and our medical professionals. We make sure that if they don't need to be in a general hospital admitted, we can take them, whatever that means. And that does mean we have to pay for a lot more providers. That does mean we need a lot more nurses. That does mean we need a lot more psychiatrists or psychiatrist practitioners or whatever, right? So it does mean that we have larger infrastructure. But it pays for itself, because where most people sit around a 65% census nationwide, we're at a 95, right?
Oh.
And so the demand is there, and it's very multidisciplinary. But For Sierra, we use a company called Track 9, and Track 9 measures our outcomes. And generally, like, how effective are you, right? And we measure that by how many patients see long-term recovery. Long-term recovery is a year or greater of sobriety. And that's on the addiction medicine side. There's different metrics for psych patients. And so for us, from Track 9, from Track 9 outcomes, we're top 2% most effective in the nation. And so we are really putting a lot of money into our clinical outcomes, right? And so that's incredibly important. And people, what I've seen, especially mom and pops, people assume that means having a master level therapist on site or what have you. And I can't tell you enough, the majority of folks in addiction medicine really ought not be there. They really are providing a disservice.
Say more. Why do you say that?
Just lack of infrastructure, lack of clinical outcomes, not the right people. We've acquired people because they will hire or they'll contract with the LMFT that will just back sign some of the counselors or associates documentation, so it appears that they have master level therapists, licensed therapists, but they really don't. And I'm not saying that we're perfect by no means, because there's always staffing issues, of course. There's always staffing cycles, right? But people run that as their permanent business. Or one of the things that I hate is most providers, and I guarantee you the majority of people listening, if they are in the addiction medicine space, when I say most providers contract their doctors, their providers out. They don't have in-house doctors. And we just do not do that. All of our physicians and mid-levels are all in-house. And we are able to, what do we get from that? Well, number one, they're a Sierra cultured employee. They understand the mission. They understand the purpose. They understand the overall large picture. Where if you use a locums group or something like that, these guys don't know you. They don't know your team. And more importantly, like, they don't know the nursing team or what the capability of the facility is. So they'll come in, they'll see the patient, and they have no rapport with the patient or what have you, because they just cycle these people in and out, these providers in and out. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. And then how do you address that? Well, the reality from like a regulatory perspective, the reality is no one really knows. No one can really tell, right? Because they will advertise that they have 24/7 nursing or what have you. And I'm speaking primarily to the addiction medicine industry at this point. But all of these are contract out, or they're all just like per diem, right? I know providers, very big ones, that don't even have RNs in their detox facility. They'll contract a local RN to come in when there's an admit or something like that, or to just log into the EMR. So there's a lot of that stuff that's going on. So again, you have to be good and actually good, and that's a big thing.
So there's a couple of themes I'm picking up, right? One is just, on one hand, just follow the demand, right? Mm-hmm. Like you took Mark to this facility, and then you just saw like there's so much demand, and then you decided to start the business. And then you kind of acquired, and then you add on additional programming depending on what the local market needs. So a lot of it is just follow the demand, and then this backed by rigorous, deep, high quality service, right?
Absolutely.
Which is it's like really the fundamentals, right? And then how do you and then the next question is, how do you actually execute this at scale? How do you think about the team, especially with the early days? Again, starting out fresh would not have been easy. And then over time, you've built up a team clearly, which is now able to do this repeatably. What did that take? And I'm sure there were a few missteps along the way, Joe. Just walk us through that.
We've made mistakes and like delayed opportunities before I will say that yeah, really the largest mistake we made was really a timing issue. And with real estate, inpatient facilities, it's very difficult to find them anywhere really. Developers don't build properties for addiction medicine specifically,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of the nuances is, even though we're a behavioral health company, we do both pretty equally, both mental health, psych, and addiction medicine. A lot of the nuances are really related to the addiction medicine industry specifically because of how new it is to healthcare in general, right? So, when I say people don't develop, people develop psych hospitals, of course, but people don't develop addiction medicine detox residential facilities. So what do you have? Well, in Southern California, you have a bunch of tiny little guys that are 6-bed residential programs, essentially. But the other option is senior care homes. You just find old senior care homes or failed senior care homes or whatever, and you buy the real estate itself, and then you run a like business in it.
Does the real estate for the facility for substance abuse, does it need to be different from any other facility? And what way? I know you said real estate folks don't build for SUD, but I'm trying to think, if you did get a hospital, 30 bed, 40 bed, 50 bed, 70 bed psych facility, could you take that and repurpose it for substance abuse?
Yeah, it really depends on zoning requirements. And so why senior care works so well is it is in California, it is a R2.1 zoning.
Got it.
And it is a similar, they call it like services. So in the zoning code,
Got it.
when you see what's called a large residential care facility, you look at the definitions of those, and every county, municipality is different. But 9 times out of 10, what is in the definition is, addiction medicine locations, senior care homes, memory care homes, etc.
Got it.
To repurpose a psych hospital is you could potentially do that. It's really a waste though, because you have a lot more rigor, infrastructure. It's a hospital, so it's built to be a hospital.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So it's actually not easy. So you get a lot of smaller substance abuse centers, and then you will have to acquire them and roll them up, and then figure out how you want to scale those.
Yeah, for us, we don't acquire anything small. Our smallest is like 32 to 40 bed facilities, and so we have to have something for us at this size now. That wasn't the case in the beginning, but for us, we won't consider any type of a new adventure unless it has at least 32 beds.
Got it.
And part of that has to do with finances. Part of it has to do with staffing. But it's really not worth it.
Got it.
For us, anyways.
Yeah. And you were talking about why the industry itself is a bit complex and not very well served at this point in time. Substance abuse is an industry.
Yeah. In general, it's new, right? It's new. And so there's a lot of complexities to that, and then it's infiltrated with people just trying to make a dollar. And it's really disheartening. Because it doesn't help with real healthcare providers, and it doesn't help the industry itself. And so, especially in Southern California, but elsewhere as well, a lot of the operators are not good faith operators, and they're wanting to, they see money sign and they're wanting to do something, and so those are the ones that do it very poorly. Oftentimes, they cut corners and whatnot. So, absolutely.
And Joe, today, if I look at Sierra, could you just walk the audience through the scale at which Sierra is today, 6 years post starting?
Yeah. So we should be at the end of this year at right around 300 or 320 beds, inpatient beds, and we're constantly acquiring. We're constantly growing. We are expanding. Again, by the end of this year, we'll have 6 outpatient clinics. The outpatient clinics include all of the regulars, I'll just say, like all the PHP, ILP, but we also do primary care and then pharmacy services. So everywhere we are at, we really expand, or the desire is to expand pharmacy services.
And is your back office centralized now, Joe, or is it facility based?
Yeah. So it depends on the size. So everything is centralized for the most part. So we have our own, rev cycle team, UR team, provider network, and that manages all locations centrally.
Got it.
When you get larger locations, 100 beds, etc., there are components of that have to break off. They can't always be managed centralized, which is part of some operators' downfall. Because, if I have a 100-bed facility, there's so much demand from that facility that it really requires dedicated staff, dedicated team. And I'm talking specifically from the back office, billing, UR, that sort of stuff. If you centralize all of it, which the core is centralized, right? But if you don't add the specific UR or the specific billing team to that large hospital, then you're going to have cash flow issues. You're going to have stuff that doesn't go out the door and that sort of thing.
Right now you're at what, 600 employees, Joe, across?
Yes, combined, yes. Around 600, 650 and growing, it seems like.
Got it. And how large is your back office, UR, and our revenue cycle teams?
Yeah, so we are really diverse. So one of the things that I believe in wholeheartedly is the team members that require the utmost talent have to be remote. What do I mean by that? So admissions is an example. So the admissions team is what I would call back office worker, right? Centralized workforce. If you look at a lot of our players, a lot of the bigger players, they will have like a call center somewhere, 9 times out of 10 in a low wage state, which makes sense economically. But what that does is it really caps the talent to that local area, right? The employees have to drive to the call center.
Yeah.
So you're only recruiting in that small little area.
Yeah.
For us, our admissions team, our entire admissions team is remote. And it's because we want to be able to pull top talent from the nation. I don't care if it doesn't even have to be the nation. It could be, somewhere in Europe or whatever, right? As long as they're top notch, right? And so a big portion of the count is facility staff, right? Because that's really where the big numbers come. Mostly nursing, tech positions, behavioral health techs, etc. And I would say probably a third, if not a little less, is really the corporate employees of that count.
Got it.
And those are diverse both in person here in Sacramento, and hybrid as well. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Actually, in a future conversation, I'd love to go deeper into the vertical integration and the ecosystem that you're creating.
Yeah.
And also, I know we spent a bunch of time talking about what you're doing for the veteran community as well. Joe, maybe just to close this off, I'd love to hear from you just two questions, right? How are you thinking about how technology is changing the future of behavioral health? Because there's so much happening in terms of what's possible. Yeah. I'd love to hear your view. And then the last one is just how you think about the future of Sierra itself.
Yeah. So, both questions obviously kind of go hand in hand. With technology, especially AI, AI is undoubtedly has to be an integral part of healthcare, but especially behavioral health. There's so much opportunity. There's so much human error in behavioral health, things that can be autonomous.
Like what?
So much stuff. Note-taking for one, right? And so, and a lot of this is being developed. Training. We see AI. A lot of us are going to AI call centers, right? It's so advanced now; it's only getting better. So there's so much technology that's integrated. One of the biggest components that really hurt people in behavioral health is recoupments. Recoupments are often caused by lack of documentation or lack of documentation quality. Yeah. And with AI built into EMR systems, you really get away from that altogether, right? That risk of not, every note is analyzed, right? What we tell our team, every note should talk about progress the patient made and the progress that still needs to be made from a very high level point of view.
Yeah.
You can't just document how good they're doing because the insurance companies, and this is a whole other conversation, will go, good, they're fixed. Send them off, right? And that's not reality. In AI, with AI integration, a lot of that or all of that is automated. And that's really the way to go. So, yeah. Your last question about Sierra.
Yeah, about Sierra.
Yeah. So we are, our goal is we're going to continue to grow. We have two opportunities of growth that we're focused on right now. One is the corporate side, what we discussed today, that is really going to be through organic growth based off of demand throughout the United States. We will grow until we can no longer handle the quality of care that we provide. At that time, that's when we'll stop. The second portion is available to anybody, and it is a JV opportunity that we offer. It's a quasi-franchise model type thing. So anybody can work with us if they have the capital to invest into opportunity deals. They can work with us on a joint venture that will basically be a partnership entity that we create, that it's a subsidiary of our company. And if they have the capital, we would provide all of the infrastructure, we would provide the market analysis, the growth opportunity, and we would manage the business. So those are the two really ways that we're going to be growing, and that's going to excel over time for sure.
Awesome. That sounds pretty exciting.
Yep.
Awesome. Joe, thank you very much for your time. This has been pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your journey, the depth, the specifics.
Absolutely.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hope to see you soon.
Yes.
And another one.
Yes.